Welcome, everyone, to Mystery, a podcast about myths and history. I am one of your hosts, Bryant, with my permanent guest, Cammie. Hello, Cammie.
Hello, Bryant.
How is it going?
Fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing pretty fantastic, too. I'm excited for today's episode. We just recently went back to the simple Greek stuff, and we're going back to it today because it's just nice and safe. It's a security blanket on the show. And today's episode's nice because it's like a throwback to episode 1, which was where we talked about the Minotaur of Crete. And, that Minotaur, he's running around the labyrinth because he's, gross. And and we're going to talk about Daedalus, the Daedalus who made that labyrinth. And so if you're just hopping in, welcome. This is Mystery. We pick lots of different topics, a lot of them Greek. Like today's, but we like to talk about these myths and legends. We're going to try and give you a story. So we're going to steal Ovid's words and just spit them right back at you. And then we're going to talk about like the history, the facts, just some of the stuff behind the myths. This one's an interesting one because, we've pounded enough Greek myths, Roman myths. What's the difference? And we've pretty much covered with these myths that a lot of these are ancient and ancient to the ancients even, and eventually just some in like starting around like the 5th 6th century, which is around Homer was around, people just started writing it down and remembering it and not destroying those libraries, and if they could help it. And so take a look. There's some really great episodes we've done. If you think you're like, I don't care about Greek myth, I really recommend, one, listening to this show, but Hercules, I think, was one of the really cool ones we did recently too, where it just shows like the imprint that those myths and legends have on so many different places and cultures and stuff. So anyway, Cammie, please regale us with the tale of Icarus and Daddy Daedalus.
Absolutely. So I used Ovid's Metamorphoses translation by Charles Martin. And I also used the latinlibrary.com for the original Latin on a couple of parts because Ovid's use of the language was very poetic, and I wanted to make sure specifically one part was in it. So, Daedalus, hating Crete and his long separation, found that his only escape was by flight. Minos had stationed ships to block the sea passage and trapped the inventor and his son in the prison he had made of his city, for Minos ruled all save the air. Daedalus, the crafty inventor, who was in prison for his works, began to toil over his workbench, collecting feathers from birds. He joined them tied together by thread and heated wax, and when he was done, they appeared to be the wings of a giant bird. He fastened them to himself and then his boy, Icarus, with a warning. Always take the middle course. Do not fly too low, for the sea will weigh down your wings, and you will drown. If you fly too high, the wax will melt, and you will fall to your death. Follow me to safety. Daedalus kissed his son and took to the sky. Solidly in the middle of the sky and sea, he was like a mother bird, showing his young to fly, urging his boy to follow him, and he did. The men below thought surely these were gods visiting the earth. The flight was long, for the sea was wide, and they passed many islands. Samos, blessed by Juno, Delos, and Paros. But Icarus grew bored of the sights, as young people often do. He began to grow comfortable in flight and wanted to test his new abilities. He began by flying circles and flipping in air. The design held. But then he grew bold. Full of hubris, he ascended. But soon he was too close to the sun. The wax melted the feathers from his arms, and he flailed his limbs wildly, mimicking the birds he saw flying above Crete. But without the feathers to catch the air, he began to descend. He called for his father, but there was no way to save him. The boy fell below the waves. The unlucky father, no longer a father, called to Icarus, crying and screaming through the horror, to ask where he could look for his boy. But then he saw the feathers upon the waves and cursed his ill-starred destiny. He built a tomb for his son upon the shores and named the place and the sea for his offspring. but his sorrow did not end there. Daedalus was to teach his sister's son of his inventing arts, but the boy surpassed the master, inventing the saw from jagged teeth fixed to iron. Daedalus, missing his own boy and jealous of the talents of his nephew, flung him from Acropolis's high cliffs, blaming the fate of the boy on his careless footing. But Minerva, in admiration of the youth's cleverness, covered him quickly in feathers to break his fall. He became a bird and managed to fly to safety. But to this day, the boy, no longer a boy, sticks to the low branches of trees, and his offspring lay their eggs in low bushes, because they were all hatched with the memory of the fall so long ago.
Very nice. Just got to point out, Minerva, Athena by another name. We literally, just recently talked about the story of Arachne and how Minerva turned Arachne into a spider. Minerva, you gotta stop turning people into animals. Funny enough, too, I was looking into that. Did you see that apparently he was specifically turned into a partridge, and that's the birth of partridges?
Yeah, so I got that specifically from Ovid. So
right.
It didn't say the name of the bird, but his name is something similar to that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And I think in Greek, that's what it's called.
Right. Yeah. So apparently, yeah, that's Minerva's just new bird time, click. And then, yeah. But, yeah, this is a lot similar to the Arachne story. It's very straightforward. It's very much so rooted in ancient Greek. And it's just wild, though, because unlike some of the other myths, it has really, I guess, the imagery itself of a human flying Icarus with these wings. I mean, there's some absolutely gorgeous paintings that I've seen. There's the one from the 1800s or late 19th century, I should say. It was Icarus who was super dramatically tossed back, and he had just huge, beautiful, brown hawk feathers all over him. So I think just the idea in general is just very inspiring. And from the Renaissance era, but even before that, though, I mean, there was just tons and tons of great art that depicted the scene because it's just so special. And Arachne, we talked about it. She had the hubris to defy Minerva. Here, Icarus, it's he wasn't haha, screw you, gods. He was just wee, and then and then it was over. So I just really like that. And again, Daedalus is very important. He's when I was reading, I was like, this guy, they call him a master craftsman. This guy is Magic MacGyver. He is not a craftsman. He's doing the weirdest crap out of nothing. They'll be he took a fish's backbone and turned it into a axe. It's you can't do that. That is voodoo. But Daedalus is really important too. And I never really kind of realized it. Daedalus isn't a god per se. A hero is sort of more it. I don't know for sure if he's even a demigod or something like that. But he is very rooted in stories. Ancient EU was a great source I used that I've used before. And they mentioned that Homer, Herodotus, Ovid, and Virgil, that's kind of the timeline order. Homer anywhere between the 6th and 11th century BCE. Herodotus was around, I think, 5th century BCE. And then Ovid and Virgil were getting closer to the 80 turn of the millennium. So he was subject for quite a while. So again, this is one of those stories that I think Greeks were super aware of, and it was just sort of ingrained in the culture in a lot of different ways. And Icarus too. There isn't so much on Icarus though. I mean, there's if you dig kind of hard enough, but in general, I kind of thought there would be more to it, other than the video games that would pop up when I Googled. But Icarus is just as well known though. And just as old. And I've been kind of on an etymology kick lately, and Icarus is I'll kind of steal this. This is Wikipedia's little etymology section on Icarus, and it's more directly transliterated into English from Ikaros, from Latin, which becomes Icarus. The Greek name is thought to have come from an earlier. It looks like Wikaros, but probably had that V kind of sound. Which would be reflected from the Etruscan name Vicare. And that reminded me of us talking about Vulcan and volcanoes,
Sure.
where there's
it sounds like the word victory as well.
Yeah, it does. It does. And there's the huge, they call it the PIE, Proto-Indo-European kind of connection that so many of these languages have. And like Vulcan, volcano, all that comes from Volcanos. So there's this really cool deep root. So I have a feeling that these stories, I mean, again, it's a very simple story. Like, dude's a master craftsman, makes wings for his son, but oh no, he got too close to the sun and he burned off. I could just imagine that being a really easy sort of campfire story told hundreds of years, like during, like pre, what was ancient to the ancients, is the way I kind of like to
Sure,
talk
it's like
about
people sitting around, kids are like, why can't we fly, Dad?
Right. Well, some dumbass didn't listen to his dad. Now go get me some wine. I don't know. But some other cool things that Wikipedia mentions, and I always love talking about euhemerism because it's just such a great concept. Euhemerism is this idea that myth is rooted in truth. And specifically, Wikipedia mentions that Hellenistic writers may be giving a euhemerizing variance in which, so the reason why they were leaving, they were escaping Crete. They were stuck in Crete. King Minos, he's so mean. And he wanted out of there. Although the story is that he was exiled to Crete because he killed Talos, the like automaton. See our other episode on automatons for more on that. So anyway, he murdered him and he was exiled, but he's like, no, we're getting out of here. Hop on these wings. And they think it was an escape where there was a boat provided by Pasiphae, for which Daedalus had invented the first sails to outstrip Minos's pursuing galleys, and that Icarus fell overboard en route to Sicily and drowned, where Heracles erected a tomb for him. So that's a lot there, and that's some big names. And I don't know why, like, as far as euhemerism goes, that felt like it was just more myth on top of the euhemerism. But it is sort of an idea that certain, maybe there was a famous inventor, maybe he did make the first sails or something like that, and that's kind of what happened. His son like tripped and fell sailing away, and everyone laughed or something, and Heracles was like, no. But you can't. It's just wild to see the story live for so long. We like, especially, and in just such a famous way too, being mentioned in like Arachne. It got mentioned in a few ways, but this by a few famous people, but it was mainly like Ovid that kind of made it a little bit more mainstream. It seems like this was really what just kind of lifted it, and I just thought it was really cool. And it also, again, it wasn't a matter of like anyone defying the gods. It was just humans like screwing up, like I really like that as well. It wasn't something crazy beyond that. And yeah, it was really fun. My last few little bits here, we do like it's been a huge subject in pottery. We've got stuff from 560 and 470 BCE. Cretan coins feature the labyrinth of Daedalus. So that, you can see how important the myth of this all is. And there was a huge resurgence in the 1st century CE from Roman painters. So it would always come back. And again, we're mentioning Minerva here. So it kind of always sparked back. That would be right around Ovid's time. And I don't know why, but yeah, this story was a great art subject for artists of all kinds, whether it's poetry, painters, potterers. Is that the word, potterer? Are you a potterer if you make pots?
I think it's like completely different.
Yeah, probably. Mason? No,
there's a word. Why did you ask me this?
Write into mystery@gmail.com if you can help us remember what a person who makes pots is. So the last cool thing that's mentioned in ancient EU, I didn't really see this anywhere else, but apparently, so in the 5th century, the Athenians, they're in Athens doing their thing, hating Spartans, and all of a sudden they are like, did you know Daedalus is Athenian? He totally is. He wasn't. So apparently, like, sources said that he was born in Crete, and I don't know, maybe that's why he hated it. He's like, oh, I was born here, I hate it. But the Athenians were just like, yep, he's a master inventor, he's Athenian. That's what it was, and they replaced Crete as his birthplace. to Athens, and they do kind of confirm Sicily is his resting place. And they even, this is kind of the crazy part, a family, I'm going to quote ancient EU, a family tree was devised so that figures such as Socrates claimed descent from Daedalus. So that's cool. You want to argue with Socrates when he's like, yes, I'm related to Daedalus. Like, can you prove it? What is proof? Define proof. What? So anyway, yeah, that's fun. I guess I can say that too, that I'm related to Daedalus if I want. But that's it. That's all I got. Very fun myth. Actually, no, I have to mention one last thing. So my first source, I love it. Theoi.com. It's Theo, Theo, I.com. And I was like, let's look it up. And it didn't really like have anything. I mean, it would show like Herodotus. It would show the sources where they mention these people, but they didn't have like their own little page. Like Theoi is like the super Wikipedia for Greek and Roman myth. You know, I love it. It's so great. It's really fun looking through it. I've learned a lot, and it shows you like I could see what you base off of Ovid's Metamorphosis there, but it didn't have like a Daedalus and Icarus page, and it would just show kind of the mentioning. So again, I like these almost seem like side characters in a larger scheme. And really, if you talk about especially Icarus, it has to be the story of Icarus and Daedalus. Like it's not, Icarus is in his own thing in a way. I mean, on Wikipedia, they both have their own page, but they all sort of say the same thing. Icarus is much smaller. So anyway, I just thought that was a really interesting little tidbit there. That it just, not one source would sort of mention everything the way sort of Wikipedia did. Like normally I can find like ancient EU, theoi.com, Wikipedia, all these will kind of have similar things, just sort of in different ways, where theoi actually goes a little bit deeper, but not this time. I thought that was really interesting. Ancient EU was definitely the deeper source here. I'll throw the link up to it because it was a lot of fun to read about, especially the whole 5th century Athenians going, hey, that guy's ours. So everyone, thank you for joining in on our story today. If you can, write in and tell us what a person who makes pots is called.
I mean, I think it is a potter now that I'm thinking about it.
There's got to be a fancier name.
I just feel like it's a word that like doesn't have anything in relation to pots.
No, it's like so please write in. We'll be very grateful if you can tell us. So remember, you can view us on YouTube. You can see Cami and I shaking and glaring at each other. And please, like us, subscribe on there if you like to see us there. And of course, write us on YouTube, all that great stuff. Let us know if you have any suggestions for future myths. We've got plenty of content, but we're always looking for more. Check out, we've got some great live shows that we have done. So check out the content. Our Facebook page is the best way right now to sort of see everything, and you can contact us directly. But also mystery, remember that's one word with an IE instead of a Y for story, @gmail.com is another great way to get in touch with us. I think that's it, right?
Our Instagram is @mythstory and our Twitter is @mythstory.
That's right. Yeah. We've been hustling up those social medias as well. So great. Well, Cami, thank you again for a wonderful story. And thank you everyone for joining us. We will see you next time.
Ooh.